Hello there, my name is Sixo, but more on that later, as right now it's time to take flight with this little lass. Yes, this is actually my first experience of the Kingdom line in hand, and it's none other than Airazor. Now, as a big fan of the original toy, and indeed the character from the cartoon, so I absolutely cannot wait to check out this new version today. Now, before we begin, I should mention that this review comes courtesy of TF Source, so I'll go ahead and put a link to their site in the video description below, where you can find Airazor and any number of the old Kingdom line as well, and Earthrise and various other Transformers toys. Go have a look. As for today, this box is looking pretty tasty. I really love this artwork just here along the front. Not much to say about the back, but there's a picture of the toy, so hey, that's cool. But anyway, let's go ahead and get this thing open and see what all the fuss is about. After all, I'm kind of living for all the focus that Beast Wars is getting at the moment. You know, new comic, new toys. It's like the 90s all over again. I can't believe it. I mean, seriously, it's just so good to see so many people giving the series a bit of focus. I really feel like it deserves it as well, because it's just so unique in Transformers history. It's just brilliant to see people coming back to it yet again. Anyway, we got her out the box, and this is everything that you get. Well, first up in the box, you get this set of instructions and a very sparkly little character card, which you can see just here. Very, very nice indeed. Although it's actually for Dinobot, as you can see, and not for the toy that you bought here. And I had gathered that they were doing that. They were just kind of mixing it up a little bit and keeping it a bit random. I don't really know why, but hey ho. Then you get this little pair of accessories which peg into the side of her arms, and they're kind of like little blasters. Very reminiscent from various scenes from the cartoon, actually, so they look kind of cool. Then, of course, you have the toy itself, and I really do think that she looks absolutely fantastic right out of the box. Just absolutely love it. Honestly, the colours are beautiful, the sculpt is nice, the design is nice, the proportions are nice. She's just nice. That really feels very spot on to the look of the character from the animation as well. Like I can just, I just look at it and I can just sort of imagine her in the cartoon straight away. And it's great, having not seen this character done in masterpiece form yet, which would, if I'm being honest, be my preference. I would love to still see that happen. But, this is great too. It's really, really quite something to see her done so well. Right, well, first things first, let's get her equipped up with these little blasters. So they just kind of peg in on the sides of her arms, like so. Very, very easy to do. There we go. That looks pretty good. And then, of course, you can go ahead and just kind of unfold her wings a little bit for a bit more of a natural position. It kind of comes, all kind of almost kind of filled up like a little backpack. Now, unfortunately, one of my wings has a stress mark straight out the box. And this bit here is looking a little bit fragile, actually. I'm already feeling quite nervous about that. Yeah, you can see it's just here, just by the hinge. And I am a little bit concerned because actually this whole piece at the bottom, this whole piece here, it kind of hinges or is attached just there. So actually that stress mark is very worrying because I'm kind of now nervous that this whole piece is going to break off, if anything, which would be a bit of a disaster, needless to say. I mean, it's not looking good. As I say, I think it was there out of the box, but actually because they kind of have a tab positioned out of the way in order to get her wings folded back in the way that they have her packaged. So I don't know, maybe it was me when I was unfolding it and I didn't realise, but certainly it was there from the moment I unfold it. So yeah, I'm a bit bummed about that, to be completely honest. I mean, you can see here that it's bad enough that it's carried through to the other side as well on the front, and yeah, I don't know, man. I just kind of... People keep telling me I'm unlucky with Generations toys, and you know what? Maybe that's true, but they don't have the best track record in this house, I've got to tell you. I guess I'm almost chuckling about it in a little way, because I kind of keep hearing people, kind of grumble about Masterpiece toys and saying, oh, what's going on with the quality and whatever else. Yeah, actually, in my experience, I don't really have that many problems with Masterpiece. There are kind of the famous ones like MP Hound and things like that, although mine hasn't broken, but of course a lot of people have had issues with that. But actually, here, I've got to be honest, Generations, I'm seeing a lot more QC errors, a lot more. Anyway, I'm not going to grumble on about it. It is what it is at the end of the day. I would just suggest that you be careful with those wings, because honestly, I think the stress mark was there out of the box. If it wasn't, and it was something I did, it really didn't require much at all to get it, So, not the best, but hey ho. At least she looks fantastic, eh? I mean, that face sculpt is one for the ages. It's absolutely beautiful. I would expect a masterpiece version of this to not really do too much different, if anything. I mean, the colours are on point. I love the purple face. Nice little eyes just in there. I mean, they could be maybe just a touch more vibrant, but still, it works. I think the moulded detail on the face itself is really unique and absolutely spot on for the character. I love the kind of head crest thing that's going on behind here as well. I think that's superb. Just absolutely flawless, in my opinion. Really digging the little moulded detail, the little feathered detail in areas such as the shoulders as well, the little shoulder pads that she's going on there. That looks cool. We'll take more of a look at it in beast mode, but of course the old bird head here on the chest, that looks nicely done as well, so can't wait to check that out properly. Got some tiny little details such as the little red maximal symbol just there, which is absolutely minuscule but looks fantastic. Quite a lot of paint in different areas. I mean, like here on the kind of crotch and the hips, you know, you've got a little bit of grey paint just there, a few gold accents. You know, it looks really, really nicely done. And you know, I will say, considering that her feet and legs are literally just the bird legs kind of turn around, they look really, really good. You know, she's got obviously decent heels on there, which add a bit of stability. You know, actually, aesthetically, I really don't mind it. And yeah, I think it's a very tidy job. Then you've got the wings themselves, which on this one, you do have the little copyright stamp and everything, which is, you know, kind of unavoidable. I guess it's got to go somewhere, but the other one looks a bit cleaner for not having it, of course. But then some nice little sort of spray brushed you know, paint at the end as well, so that's really nice. And assuming that you don't consider the wings to be kibbled, then this thing's remarkably clean as well. I mean, you've got the little tail feathers just down there, but really nothing, you know, kibble-wise on the back at all. Now, articulation-wise, she's got great range at the head, can move back and forth quite a bit as well, so can't really look down, but certainly can look up quite far. Can look side to side as well, so that's really, really good. There's kind of a nice little click into the kind of neutral position as well, which I kind of like. Now, with the arms, they go fully forward. Really nice joints at these arms and in the legs as well, actually. All the joints feel really, really good, so that's great. They will fan out quite far to the side. The shoulders, the actual shoulder pads are on a little pin, so they just move kind of independently, so that's good. Now you will get a bit of bicep swivel just there as well, and the arms do rotate just up to 90 degrees, so absolutely fine there. And there's no hand or wrist articulation of any kind. There is actually a little joint that will, you know, sort of turn the wrists upwards like that. I mean, in a sort of unnatural movement for transformation, I presume, but it's not really part of the articulation in any way. And then at the waist, there is a bit of a waist swivel going on. And no kind of up crunch or anything like that. Coming further down to the legs, and you've got very strong joints at these legs again. Now at the hips, they actually go all the way past 90 and carry on going. I mean, that's just exceptional articulation right there, which is great. And it does feel like there's a couple of like little notches as well. Again, coming back into the sort of default stance, it just kind of notches into position, which I think is kind of nice. It feels quite satisfying when it happens. And then at the knee, that goes well past 90 again. So really impressed with that. That's very, very cool. And there is a little bit of rotation just there at the thigh as well. And then you've got a ball joint at the ankle. So what else do you want? And then, of course, you've got the wings, and as I already kind of mentioned, well, certainly I'm going to be super careful with mine. Let's put it that way. But there is a hinge just there. You probably want to kind of take that piece, you know, putting your fingers just on it directly rather than bending it from up here, just to be careful. But that will move. It's quite stiff again, actually. A little double hinge just there in the middle as well. So you've got another joint that will go back and forth. I think there is actually just a little something there as well. And then ultimately the wing will fan out like so on this little kind of peg, mushroom peg just there. So it fans out quite far, actually. Works really, really nicely. All of which means she's super articulated. And really, this thing has everything you could want in terms of articulation. You know, I mean, maybe just hands or wrist swivel or articulated hands, that kind of stuff, you know, but other than that, for a Generations toy, this thing's incredible in terms of its articulation. Way more than most, and just feels super fluid as well. A lot of fun to pose. Does a kneel super convincingly. Equally, a very, very convincing run. So it just shows you great stability in this toy, but really lithe movement as well. The joints are superb. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I mean, she can stand one-legged, no problem. Again, stability, not an issue here. Joints, not an issue. Just think she looks great. Looks pretty cool on a flight stand too, kind of in a mid-air pose, kind of classic Airazor from her first appearance. And I do kind of wish that the feet actually kind of folded backwards a little bit more, so in that way that feet do when characters are flying. But otherwise I think she looks excellent. That said, I'm a big fan of how the wings can kind of fold in a little bit like that as well and kind of sit naturally on her back. I think, it's superb. Nice bit of design. Yeah, I've got the grumble about the stress mark, and I do think that's a little bit poor. I think that could have been done a bit better in terms of how that piece hangs on, just not at that one point. But otherwise, they're very cool. They look good. More than anything, though, I'm just really impressed with the vibe I get from this toy and how much it does remind me of the character from the cartoon. I mean, there are elements that differ. I mean, a lot of people are kind of saying, oh, it's like a little mini masterpiece or whatever. And, I can see the difference. I suppose if you go looking for it, there are things that I would expect an eventual masterpiece toy to, kind of do differently. I mean, things like the little missiles on the arms, would hopefully kind of fold away. The wings would potentially be a bit smaller and kind of fold away a little bit more as well. And there are various differences, kind of stylistic differences, what have you, across her body that I would expect would be different. I mean, ultimately, the masterpiece toys have a much more toon-centric look to them, the Beast Wars ones. They really feel like they're kind of ripped off the screen, and that's not a phrase I use lightly, my friends, let me tell you. Whereas this thing does feel a little bit more stylized, but still really hits that animation look quite hard all the same. I mean, in terms of comparisons, this will probably show you what I mean. So first up, this is Generations Rat Trap and Rhinox just here, which is a really interesting one, because again, Generations toys, although actually I have had these sitting alongside my Masterpiece collection for a little while now. I mean, the Rat Trap is actually a decent size for that kind of collection, for that lineup. He works pretty well with stuff like Masterpiece Optimus Primal. There is actually even functionality on Primal to kind of carry Rat Trap on his back, for example, stuff like that. It's just kind of a weird cross functionality thing. And then Rhinox, who doesn't work as well. He's too small for Masterpiece, but arguably not a bad size for Generations, actually, ironically. So, and these are actually, if anybody's wondering, these are the repainted versions, the LGEX versions that were done. So, a bit more paint and everything else. But yeah, interesting to see. I'm still holding out for Masterpiece versions of both these characters. I really hope it happens soon. But hey, Kingdom Rat Trap is looking pretty cool too. Then here she is with a couple of Masterpiece toys after all. This is Optimus Primal and Cheetor, of course, and actually I don't think that looks too bad. I mean, obviously she is a bit small, could definitely do with being taller, because she wasn't that small in the cartoon, but still, stylistically, all the rest, she's a good stand-in at least, you know what I mean? That's kind of what I was looking for, if anything. I was just kind of super interested to not only see the toy, but also kind of get this lineup, because who knows when we'll see a Masterpiece version, frankly. It could be tomorrow one's unveiled, it could be 10 years, I don't know, but at least for now, this is fun to see. Then we got a bit of a mixed Generations and Masterpiece thing going on here with MP Black Arachnia just there. That's not the Kingdom version. I know a lot of people kind of think that they look very similar, but there are differences. And this, again, is Generations Waspinator, the LGEX version. And actually that toy, that Generations version, I think fits in better than most in a kind of MP lineup. I would certainly recommend it to people that are kind of after a Masterpiece Waspinator. I think it's a good stand personally, but it works for me anyway. But yeah, this is interesting to see. Then we've got a couple of the bigger lads on the go here. We've got Masterpiece Megatron and Dinobot. Love both these toys. Love them. Absolutely love how they look. Love everything about them. And yeah, again, Airazor, very, very tiny. I don't know, it's kind of fun, isn't it? Here she is with the recent Transart Skateboard Gorilla. That's Transmetal Optimus Primal to you and me, but I did a review of this toy recently on the channel. Yeah, and that, again, that kind of works for me. I don't know, it looks alright. And then although these two character models never shared the screen together, it's still fun to see her with this guy. Is of course Transmetal 2 Megatron. This is Jiangxing Metal Beast Winged Dragon. And yeah, any excuse to get this thing out, realistically. But then we come to the comparison that I've certainly been most looking forward to, and that is with Masterpiece Tigatron. And of course these two are very famously close allies, let's say, in the cartoon. And so yeah, I've been really longing to see them in toy form. And again, my preference would have been for them both to be in Masterpiece form. But hey, you got to take what you can get sometimes, right? So look, here's the thing. Clearly, Airazor is a little bit small, and if you're going to mix Generations with Masterpiece, that's what you're going to get at the end of the day. But it does seem to me a little bit fortuitous that both of these characters have been realised in new toy form in the last 12 months or so. And yes, it would be nice if they were both done in one line. I mean, who's to say if we'll still get a Kingdom Tigatron or not? Maybe it'll happen. But for now, at least, it's still fun to see, I think. So yes, the scale doesn't really work, but at the end of the day, it's still fun to see these two together, isn't it? So anyway, that's a lot as far as Airazor's robot mode goes, but let's check out that transformation to bird mode. Right, well that's transformation done, and the first thing to note is that it's quite a lot of fun. Nothing really too challenging here, and some clever stuff along the way that I really like, particularly in those robot mode legs. I mean, some bits of it are quite reminiscent of the original toy, but I do kind of like the way that those legs kind of curl around and kind of become the bird mode legs. I think it's a bit unique, it's really clever. They pin in on the sides really neatly too, and they do the job well. Some clever stuff involved elsewhere as well, particularly like in the top half, which is kind of cool. I mean, I do like the way it kind of pivots, to kind of sort of shrink in, like collapse a little bit to make the bird mode a bit smaller than a robot. I think that's pretty cool. Overall, it's a lot of fun. I'm impressed. Now, of course, it is worth me mentioning that I was quite careful with the wings along the way still, just to avoid any more, anything else going a little bit wrong, but didn't seem to be any problems, so that's good. Now, in the bird mode, it is quite tidy on the whole. I think it looks obviously a lot better from a front view. From the rear, you do get kind of a bit of, some obvious robot mode kibble, let's be fair, just going on there, and it's very typical of these kind of beast modes, to be fair. I'm not gonna mark it down too much, because I think, even the Masterpiece toys have a bit of that going on. Not to this extent, maybe, but it is what it is with these beast modes, frankly. I guess there are only so many ways you can kind of sandwich and hide a robot inside a fleshy animal, right? I mean, not that I've really tried many particular ways, but I'm guessing, Now, there is quite a lot of orange and gold going on here. Obviously, the feet kind of tie into that a little bit as well, even though that they're meant to be there. But still, as I say, I think it's a really decent bird mode, and I think it's helped by the fact that it looks to me anyway, to be sort of fairly accurate. I mean, look, I'm not an ornithologist, as you know, but to my eye, it makes for good bird. I think the head in particular is a real highlight. It's got, tons of character, looks great, nicely painted, really like the feathered moulding on there as well. Eyes look good, and there's even a little movable beak. Although it is a bit of a pain, I've got to say. I did have to resort to using a bit of a tool just to get it open, but once you do, it looks fantastic. Now, we've already kind of talked about this section a little bit, but the whole kind of back here with the slight paint going on, that looks really cool too. Really love that feathered detailing, as I say. Just think overall, nice job. Now, besides the beak and the wings, which we've already talked about, there is a bit more articulation to be had, mostly in the head actually, which will turn from side to side, kind of at an angle like that, but will also kind of pivot forward a little bit, so that's pretty cool. Actually quite poseable in that head, because it will go quite far back as well, so for kind of a kind of gliding pose, you might imagine. And on that basis, there is a bit of articulation in the feet as well. Obviously they're ball jointed, we kind of looked at those already, and you can just kind of have the legs going back a little bit, which I think would be good for a kind of straight flight pose as well. So, not too much in terms of posability, but some. I mean, she does look quite good on a little flight stand here. I mean, I should stress it doesn't come with the toy. It's one of mine that I just had already, but still. But I do wish that those feet would fold away a little bit better than maybe they do. So I guess the kind of lack of articulation in the feet is probably something that carries over, just a tiny bit from the robot mode. But in all honesty, it's really fine. I'm not grumbling too much. Anyway, there's no doubt that this thing looks better from a top view, or a bird's eye view, you might even say. How about that? Anyway, it does suffer a little bit from the underneath. As I say, as is kind of the situation with a lot of these beast modes, a lot of the time. But still, I think there's quite a bit to like here overall. Bizarrely though, I think one of my favourite poses to have her in is this kind of stood with the wings furled round her type of stance. And I don't know, something about the wings, the way they work, I think that comes off well. I like it a lot. Now size-wise, in bird mode, she's pretty dinky on the whole. That's even including the wings. I mean, she's just maybe a little bit smaller than something like Oculamax Laserbeak, which, of course, as I say that, makes me realise that unless you know how big something like a 1980s cassette is, then, because this is the same size as that, maybe that doesn't mean too much to you. But if you're young enough not to know, then hey, I guess you've got plenty of time still left in your life to look it up. Otherwise, perhaps the best comparison I can offer you is with Masterpiece Tigatron again, although this time in his beast mode. And I have to say, this is where it really works for me. I just think that they look superb together. You know, the two robot modes may differ a little bit in size, more than you'd like anyway, but you know, here, that really works. So yeah, I'm sure like a lot of Beast Wars fans, I'm still kind of holding out for the idea of a Masterpiece Airazor before too long, just as I'm sure there are plenty of collectors that would like to see Tigatron done in Kingdom as well. But you know, actually these two, they don't look too bad together, you know, particularly in Beast mode. I think that, you know, it's close enough for now anyway. And there's no doubt that although she's, you know, not quite on the level that I would expect of an eventual Masterpiece toy, Kingdom Airazor is pretty good as well. Overall then, I think there's really a lot to like here. I think that robot mode is superb. It's about as good as it gets on a Generation toy. You know, amazing articulation, really good look to it, nice paint, just great, really good. I think the transformation is very simple, but does what it needs to do, and I think the bird mode is pretty nice too. Do be careful with those wings, particularly right out the box. I think that's that's a little bit of a black mark, needless to say. That's definitely taken the sheen off this release for me, just a smidge. And I do think that the way that the wing is designed could just be a little bit better, with not so much kind of resting on that one like little connection there, where you might get a little stress mark. But otherwise, you know, I've really not got anything bad to say about her. Needless to say, it's a toot. Now, as already mentioned, this toy is available from tfsource.com, so I'll go ahead and put a link to their site in the video description below. I'll also include a link to my review of Masterpiece Tigatron, and I'll put a link to TFSource's listing for that too. Why not? Just in case it takes your fancy. But how are you feeling about old Airazor today? Do you like what you see? Not so sure? Give me your thoughts below. Do you think it works with Masterpiece Tigatron or not so much? Otherwise, that's it from me, so enjoy the rest of your day, and TTFN.